Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is good. And yeah, thanks for joining. Sorry, just caught a bit off guard trying to do two things at once, and that's always going to backfire on yourself. But never mind, we are here and we are live, and hopefully you can all hear me. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, I mean, I'm not here to get into any sort of deep dive of Middle East conflicts or anything like that, but obviously activity over the last 96 hours has certainly moved the price of Bitcoin. So I just want to talk about how Bitcoin has performed over the last 7 days, shall we say, what perhaps has sort of driven the directions it's gone at each of the days that we've seen the price move, because it has been very volatile. I mean, we've got to accept, we've been in a relatively stable period for a couple of weeks where moves have happened up or down, but they've been quite slow. We saw some big move down and then followed by a very big move up yesterday, not just for Bitcoins, but across the board, to be perfectly honest with you. So want to run through that. Obviously, we're going to have a look at prices across Bitcoin and the other assets. We're just going to have a look at sort of, long-term, medium term, I suppose, but certainly where Bitcoin's going over the next few months. Have a look at altcoins and probably a little bit of a sort of lower spectrum. There's been a few questions that have been asked, so we'll have a look at those as well. Beautiful CBDCs have been asked, so we'll try and talk about that. Subnets, etc. And yeah, we'll just go from there. But as always, you got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I have just put a little poll out. I am always interested. We've had a strong move up. What do we think is the next thing? Was that, I suppose, the final dip before we get that next move up? So what are we doing? All-time highs or sub 100? Just kind of keep it nice and round. If you go, feel free to contribute towards that. We'll have a look a little bit later on where people are going and take it from there. But without any further ado, let's just find the button that's hiding and we'll crack straight on. There we go. Okay, the charts as we always see them now, 3-day time frame, Bitcoin. And I mean, look, let's just blow it up on the bigger screen so you can see it a bit clear. But forget the politics at the moment. Forget the war word or bombs or whatever. What's Bitcoin really done? It's just bounced between the ranges that it's actually been in really since the beginning of this month. So yeah, we've had a little rise above it and we've wicked below over the weekend, but we've recovered back and we are just playing that range, 106,500 to basically 102,000. And there's nothing really that's kind of shaken that. There is, we talked about it last week, that sort of double top. And I'll be honest with you, looking at where price was going Saturday night, Sunday morning, I thought, right, we've kind of broken this. This might be the double top playing out. But as I said, recovery on Monday has kind of alleviated those concerns for the time being. And as I say, when you look at it on a higher time frame, like the 3-day time frame, just kind of looks like business as usual. It doesn't really matter what's going on over in the Middle East. Bitcoin seems to be doing okay. One of the things that has continued to climb, and I've talked about this, I think I'm probably boring everyone to death, is Bitcoin dominance. It's continued to climb. Obviously, over the weekend, with the way that altcoins fell away, we were talking about 66% dominance at the moment. I still think we're going to head towards that level, sort of 70, 71%, where we've seen the previous highs for Bitcoin dominance before we see those alt seasons. We'll have a talk about what may happen when we get there. I completely understand we're still living with tighter bars compressing into that rising compression over here, which you don't need me to draw, but it's kind of just like this. There's something there, and I get it. People will be saying, look, we're getting close to the apex. We may see that alt season, and hey, we may well. I personally am not sure I'm seeing that right now. I live to think there are definitely mini alt seasons, and we'll talk about where those go later on. But right now, it's still continuing to climb, and yet some altcoins have done very well over the last 48 hours. But alt season is still not with us at the moment. Bitcoin dominance continuing to rise, suggesting that actually hedging ourselves in Bitcoin is probably a better play. Although when we look at the last 7 days, actually BitTensor's not done too badly, and I know that most of us are in the BitTensor ecosystem, so that's fair enough. In terms of looking at total 2, so again, I'm sorry to teach people to suck eggs, but for those that are new or don't really know what total 2 is, that's just the total market cap excluding Bitcoin. So we've got Ethereum, we've got every altcoin, stable coins within there, and again, we're pretty far away from that that kind of I can't remember what I decided the Gandalf line was. It was the opposite of it. But whatever it is, that sort of 1.25 trillion mark, we've fallen away from that. Matter of fact, we're actually hanging in and around the lows at the moment of 1.1 trillion. And we all actually went almost down to 1 trillion over the weekend. But altcoins did well this weekend, absolutely. But again, actually looking at this, it's still kind of falling away, which is what we would expect, because we've just said that Bitcoin dominance is actually still climbing. So that must mean that the rest of the altcoins are feeling the pinch of that. So still a bit of work to do there. This is just ratifying that there is no alt season right now. I think that level it's stabilized, that sort of that 1.1 trillion. It's a fairly decent level in terms of we've got some activity in March and April. Sorry, I don't have my pen on. March and April in and around here. And then, okay, I might be stretching it a little bit there, but there's certainly some price activity there. So we are seeing a little bit of a bounce from that, maybe a bit of a relief rally. And even when you look at it on the right-hand side, the majority of altcoins are doing all right that I'm tracking at the moment, are generally doing all right. Bitcoin dominance ever so slightly down today, but not by too much. And then, yeah, BitTensor. So where were we? I mean, people are going to ask me where we were in terms of the sidestep and everything else, but I'll get into what I've done over the past 48 hours in a moment. But what we can actually see, this is a bit reflective of the total too, because, okay, we've had that sharp move back down. We had a very strong recovery from it. But where does it actually put us? We're still sort of hanging around these lows here at the moment. We haven't been able to get any sort of momentum past that. I know what we get to today, about 360 level. And look, there's plenty of days left on this particular candle, but actually looking at today, just on the right hand side with BitTensor, it is currently just over 1% down, roughly about $4. Nothing really to write home about. But given how much it moved yesterday, and we will go into BitTensor in a lot more detail, it's not surprised that we need a bit of cooling off. Maybe actually a little bit of a retrace back down to sort of build some strength, because it was such a strong move. But we'll have a look at that later on. These lines, I mean, we're kind of stuck between these lines that we've had on my chart now for probably over 6 months. I thought, right at the end yesterday, it was actually about 7 o'clock, I think. It was like hovering at 320. I thought, that's going to be perfect for the talk, because it's going to just rest nicely on this line. Maybe we can talk about a bounce and a move back upwards. It actually continued to climb yesterday, which actually forced me into some action for some stuff, which we'll go over later. But that wick down again to a level we have pointed out, sort of 290 before. A lot of activity in and around, sorry, where my head probably is, but there's sort of this level here. But yeah, I'm not sure we're out of the woods with BitTensor yet, I'll be honest. But a good strong move yesterday, absolutely. Okay, nothing in the chat, so we'll continue. So the one, I won't play it because I don't think the speaker system, it's just going to hear the echo of my microphone when I play it. So I'm sure many of you have seen this, either on Twitter or even on the news. And I just think it's just the most human response I think I've actually seen from a world leader, not just the president of the United States, in which Donald Trump effectively just tells that Iran and Israel have been fighting so long they have no fucking idea what they're doing or what they're fighting for. And I just think it's the dropping of the F-bomb. It said a lot of things to me, to be honest. And I'm not digging into this. It was just going to lead on to what we're going to talk about later on. But obviously he's very disappointed with the actions that have continued. He's kind of looked a bit stupid because, last night when Bitcoin's price was rallying that second time, sort of post 7 o'clock at night, and we saw the altcoins make that second leg move up, it was all off the back of Donald Trump's Truth Social message tweet, whatever they call them, saying that they'd agreed a ceasefire that would start in 6 hours time or whatever. And then, within an hour of him going public to the world about that, and let's face it, there's so many eyeballs on that account, Israel and Iran are just firing missiles at each other again. So he's rightly a bit annoyed, a bit aggrieved with what's going on. He's got a combat journalist, I suppose, and I just love it. Whether you love or hate the guy, I just love the fact that it was a genuine human reaction. I imagine, just like whatever has just been constantly asked the same question, and you're just pissed off with them anyway, and you just let it out. So absolutely, that sort of caught the headlines at the moment. But again, the ceasefire doesn't seem to have held. And so we'll have a look at how that, may impact Bitcoin going on. But, what happened yesterday or this weekend, so I keep on thinking today's Monday, was kind of strange. There's a few articles whilst I talk over this, but we had this conflict between Israel and Iran probably been going on for 10 days prior to the United States going in and just effectively replaying the script of Top Gun Maverick by dropping a couple of bunker busters on some nuclear facilities. But it was the weekend itself in which we actually saw the price move. And so we saw that massive fall all the way back down to 100,000, just ever so slightly below, I think. And then, we had, that was off the back of the US's involvement. Obviously, there was some fear of what was going to happen. But actually, then Iran effectively fired some missiles, but rang the Americans beforehand to say, hey, by the way, you better move your fire planes because there's some missiles coming over and we actually don't want to hit one. And so the markets took that very well. And then actually what happened on Monday, it was a bit of a non-event for Sunday night, really, with the futures markets opening green, Asia, another green session, and the world just didn't really seem to care. And so Bitcoin massively moved back up. I mean, we got as high as about 106,700 this evening, and we'll go into potentially why we're at that next move up then. But yeah, it was a strong bounce from that. And I think this is the key, sort of how well does Bitcoin fare in times of crisis? And we can see, we're, the markets, traditional crypto, we're in that bullish rise, whether we're in a slight downtrend at the moment. Generally, we're in the bull market, and it generally feels that actually Bitcoin is able to hold its own in those times. I mean, as I mentioned, the conflict was going on for 10 days beforehand. And I think we can come down here and we'll have a look at this here. So, the 12th of June is when this all started. But you can kind of see the blue line here is the Bitcoin's price. I keep on calling it that, Bitcoin's price. And right up until the weekend, it was kind of just floating from 106 to 104. Nothing really was shaking it. We've obviously got, the Ukraine war still going on, though no one ever really wants to talk about that one at the moment. We've got the issues with it just internally within Israel itself, which again, I don't really want to get drawn into. And yet Bitcoin was able to hold its own price. But actually, it was when the United States got involved and actually took action that we started to see Bitcoin react to it. And the problem with Bitcoin is it is an asset class that is open 24/7. Now, I'm not saying that the President of the United States went, you know what, guys, I don't want to crash our markets here, so let's wait till the weekend and we'll hit it. But the reality of it is that when the bombing of the nuclear sites took place, it was Saturday evening, early hours of Sunday morning, I suppose, Iranian time. And so the traditional markets weren't open. So they didn't feel the knee-jerk reaction that Bitcoin experienced from that and the fear that came potentially with those strikes as to how the Iranians would act from that. And I think that's what, is certainly being spun as to why Bitcoin crashed. But then once, I suppose, concerns were put to rest that Iran wasn't going to escalate this with the United States or NATO or anything like that, then Bitcoin was able to recover. And as I mentioned, the futures markets opened Sunday after the Iranians had fired at Qatar and Iraq and a few other Air Force bases in United States Air Force bases. And so they knew that they've had their safe face retaliation and we can just continue as if it had never happened. And I mean, I'll just go back to this chart here, but just take a look at the NASDAQ. I mean, I have to get zoomed really far in here, just bear with me. Let's get it on the 4-hour time frame. We are, what is that? Maybe 20 points away from an actual all-time high on the NASDAQ. So Bitcoin had to take the brunt of it. NASDAQ was fine. Come Monday morning, opens up. We're all happy. We're all good. We'll continue rallying to the upside. So yeah, a bit of an interesting way that's still held. Now, there's loads of other sort of charts in there. This is a really good article. If you're into sort of trying to understand how major global events have impacted Bitcoin's price, and you're not asking for opinions, you just want the data, this is the article. I'll post it in Discord afterwards. There's some good, interesting things here. But I found this quite interesting as well in terms of, Bitcoin's ability to rebound 10 days after a major event and then 60 days after a major event. And you can kind of see, I mean, I'm not trying to deny that the S&P and gold don't do that. But what I'm just suggesting here is that Bitcoin is just as sturdy as any of these. That volatility is kind of fallen away a little bit. And we actually do see some major recoveries a couple of months after any major event. Major and major though, but you get the point I'm trying to make. So obviously we had the US-Iran escalation in 2020, COVID outbreak, 60-day returns, both of those around about 20%. US election, obviously, this crypto went wild with Donald Trump coming in because we were going to be having so much winning. We were going to get tired of that winning. And yeah, 113%. Obviously, the invasion of Ukraine, only a 15% return. That was in the bear market. So yeah, a bit more difficult there. Banking crisis, again, that was, for me, one of the key events that actually kickstarted and confirmed that crypto and Bitcoin was out of the bear market and was starting to climb back up. And then interesting there that the carry trade unwinding doesn't have a 60-day returns, but we know that the carry trade, what the carry trade was. I'm gonna have to. Sorry, apologies here. This was the carry trade. So 2 months after the carry trade, which went down to 50,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 candles. It was 65. So we're up 30% in 2 months there. So yeah, it has that ability to really bounce back from global issues, crises, whatever you want to call them. And war is certainly no different. And yeah, I think this bold lettering here, it's not immune to war. So the fear that comes out from those outbreaks, but it isn't really rocked by it. Yeah, okay, it has initial setback, but actually we find that the amount of demand that is there to buy up those dips leads into that one. And then, what do I want to get to on this point here? Let me just scroll down. I'm not exactly too sure, but we'll use this one as a thing. And I think, just sort of trying to just summarize my thoughts on where Bitcoin's gone. Let me just then play another devil's advocate to this, because, I don't know how long I've waffled on about market maker theories and, show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. And, we're all just suckers here and the big boys are just moving the price however they choose to do that. And I think that, I stand by that statement as to what happened this weekend, to be honest, because as I said, the traditional markets were closed. So the news event happened on Saturday night. Well, institutional investors investing in the ETFs, they couldn't sell because the markets were closed for them. You got to remember, they buy into the ETF. The ETF is just backed by Bitcoin that's bought by the ETF supplier. So they weren't the ones that panic sold, paper handed the issue there. We then have, it wasn't as if Bitcoin's price just happened to fall because the rest of the traditional markets were falling either, because again, they were closed at the moment. And I say, well, what did cause the price to fall? Most people will tell you, it was retail. Retail on Saturday night, instead of being out at the pub, they were sat looking at their computer screens, panicking. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back, not anything else that had happened to retail over the last 6 months of disappointment, and struggling and massive dips down to 75,000. It was, the US taking out 3 nuclear facilities in a country that has threatened to try and get nuclear weapons for 30 years or whatever. No, it was definitely them. And I should say that just isn't true. I don't believe that level of retail is currently in the market. The retail in the market, like you and I would argue we are fairly hardened to that kind of stuff at the moment. We are ready to ride out that level of shock and awe and fear in any market. Spare capital will try and buy it because we think, we believe that the gains are going to be there in a few months' time. And so who does that really leave us with to move the price? Well, I would argue that the price dropped back down because we were liquidating long positions. Who is the person, I'm personifying it, best positioned to liquidate long position. It's the market makers. It's the people that are taking the other end of the trade, so the greedy longs. They're going to drive that price back down. And this just goes to show it again, because what happened in the space of 12 hours, they were able to drive that price down. We'll have a look at a liquidity heat map in a moment. Able to drive that price back down. Remember, as those are getting liquidated, everyone is selling or getting liquidated. They're also positioning themselves again. And then when the market's back over and it's a nothing burger, what happens? They just move the price back up again. And the speed at which it went back down and came back up on Monday, to me, just really looked like market maker volatility, just moving the price in the way it is. And yeah, I think most of you that watch this believe, or at least to a certain extent, that market makers really do control those markets. But if you still had any doubts, that kind of, interaction with price over the weekend, I think for me really kind of cements just how they can do that there. It goes into liquidation points here. But if you have a look at this heat map, it's on the 3-day, it might not be the easiest to see. But obviously we've got this weekend that's coming in on the right-hand side. Obviously, as it's green and getting yellower, that's sort of bigger and deeper liquidation points. And we can kind of just see that they've just whipped down, got through to 99,000, cleared that one out, and then moved it back up quite swiftly. And there's not really any short liquidations being piled in here at the moment, as in people are going, following the trade with shorts. But I don't know when this chart was actually taken, as in the time of it. So we'll have to bear that one there. But again, we have a look. Let's go on the hourly. Yeah. So we've had, as I've pointed out, the conflict going on, just Israel and Iran throwing missiles at each other. Yeah, a little bit of up and down in and around some of the weekend. I'm not sure what might have driven that. 7 o'clock on Friday morning, but probably some data that came out. And then we've had this, and then this is the event. So from 103,000, that's the cascading event that sort of took it down over a couple of hours. And then we just see again an incredibly sharp move back up. And we've had a couple of bites of it, move back up, and then perfect market maker theory here, and said everyone's suddenly getting excited again. So they're going to go uber long with ridiculously high leverage. I'll tell you what, then we'll just sweep the lows quickly again and then reverse it back through. And we climb up. And I will stand by that blue in the face until I'm proven otherwise. That's what's happened. And here it is on the heat maps that I use. And you can say, look at this. This just built up over, this is on a 2-week time frame. So 12th of June is when everything started. Wasn't really much of any sort of longs or liquidations there. But as price just meanders left and right, we're starting to build at either side of the price action. Well, at some stage, market makers going to move that just to make their point. And they've just cleanly taken it out. They get down to right down at the bottom. There's nothing left for them to take. And then they reverse it. And they start eating through some of these shorts. Now, we still have a bit here to go. So, there's still room for them to move it up. And as you can see right now on the far right-hand side below the price, there is some long liquidation points being built up. There are people going long, but it's not as deep as those that went short off this move, and even off this move from 109 last time. So, plenty of targets there for them to take up. Certainly something just to bear in mind. And I'll try and stop my rant on that there. I'm not going to go into this one, but we talk about the SEC so often over the last 2 years. Just want to sort of quickly touch on, in case anyone missed it, that the new rules published by the SEC have effectively made staking rewards, well, they use the term here, fully legal. They are not regarded as a security now. Now, that doesn't make much of a difference for us in the UK, but it's just setting that precedent that, hey, maybe someone in the United Kingdom might be looking at the US thinking, these guys are a bit more forward thinking now, perhaps we should have a look at how we are assessing things, how we are assessing retail's ability to interact and access these things. Because remember, we can't use custodial based staking in the United Kingdom. That's where you'd go to Binance or so and stake on there. We have to use, if we want to do it that way, we have to use exchanges that perhaps we haven't had to fully KYC on to do it. But a positive step forward there. And then some of the other news that's kind of sort of happened this week, and another Donald Trump favorite was him effectively getting so fed up with Chairman Powell. I think the stress is starting to show on old Trump here. They referred to him as a stupid person. And and, you know, really trying to put the pressure on him to drop the interest rates. We talked about it last week. It happened the day after the call. The interest rates were still paused, and we'll have a look in a moment, but it's not really looking like interest rates are probably going to move in that July Fed rate that we talked about. Now, one of the things that was interesting was today, Powell's giving evidence on whatever, but he's always going to be asked about cryptocurrency. And he effectively, in inverted commas, has given green light, confirmed that he's given green light for the banks to enter crypto. I can't remember the term he actually used. US banks can now offer services to Bitcoin and the entire crypto sector. And that happened around about 6 o'clock this evening, which is why we saw a move, in my opinion, from 105,000 to nearly 107,000. It was, I mean, you go back, you know, in 5 minutes, the price was moving up, sort of a positive spin from that. But actually, as we're seeing at the moment, it's not been able to hold that. And I think it's because everyone knew that. It's a nice little soundbite that's just captured people. And I would go back to just saying that, you know, we're still in this such a strong news-driven environment at the moment, where we're just pouncing on positive stuff, and it gives us a push, or it gives a encouragement for market makers to make the push, but it never really lasts, because, you know, deep down, one, we've heard him say similar things like this before. Two, we've seen that the Fed's attitude and the SEC's attitude to cryptocurrency has massively changed. So it's not surprising that comments like that are going to come out. I can't see him, you know, categorically being like, no, crypto's still bad, we're not doing it, when the SEC are making such strides, when, you know, Congress or the Senate or whoever has just gone and passed the Genius Act, sorry. So yeah. Now, in terms of, you know, the long-awaited Fed rate cut, still over 80%, suggesting that this is not going to happen. There was a little bit of hope yesterday, as one of the board members said that she'd be in favor of a rate cut, but, you know, being in favor is one thing, actually doing it is another. So we'll just wait to see how we are when we go forward there. But right, I think that's enough of that. It's nearly half an hour waffling already. Let's have a look at where Bitcoin's price is. Now, we've already actually seen a bit of a liquidation heat map, but just to kind of show you how it works and how it looks on the charts that I use, I mean, just look, you know, this, I haven't updated this from last week because at the time, CoinAnk just wouldn't load the liquidation chart for me. So this is exactly how everything looked. So when we had our call last week, which was here, we were in that 50-50 zone. Where do we think it's going to go? We're favoring, actually, it's probably going to go back down and have an attack at the 100K level. And that's exactly what it did. And yeah, I'll extend it out. Just look, absolutely clean through that section. It had nothing left, which I showed you on the CoinAnk chart earlier. So it just reversed itself back up. It didn't have the strength to get all the way down to 90K. We need something else for that because there's other things in our way. So I thought, right, well, I've taken that level there. We can then move back up. And that's why I encourage you. CoinAnk is a free chart. Obviously, learn how to decipher liquidation heat maps. But just have these on a big picture chart of yours. They don't even have any charts that you're trading from or whatever. And you don't need to do on anything other than Bitcoin. But these are just, you know, they're not telling you when a move's going to happen, but they're just telling you moves that if something happens, either positive or negative, then actually you know where pivot points may be. And I stand by EMAs and fib levels and everything else, but these are really good big picture visualization zones. And you think you can actually say to yourself, right, well, we entered into this zone, but we didn't close below that zone. I mean, I'm sure we did on the 5-minute time frame. We didn't close below that. So as long as we didn't close below it, and there's no worry that we're going to necessarily hit back here immediately. We'll have time to reassess what's going to happen and go from there. And so if you are that mind where you think, right, that's maybe an ideal place to take along, you can have a look. And it's not just going, right, well, it's cleared out that vector, that liquidation hotspot. So I'm definitely going to, you know, go the opposite of where it was before. You have to use other things, but it's a nice little confirmation for you. And as I say, just a big picket target for you to be able to just zoom out and go, right, okay, where's price action? What's it done? Where's it near? And be able to take it from there. So I'll stand by sticking those on there. We need to make this gray now. I mean, I won't. We'll just put this on the monthly just so we can give a bit of a better picture. If it starts to load for me. Okay, so as I say, between 105 where we are now and 100, there really isn't much here. There's some still down at like 98,000, but there's nothing there. But we're really starting to build up. But actually, I see that chart we were looking at earlier kind of said it was at 109 level. We can really see if we zoom out on a wider time frame, we're getting some big levels in and around about 111 and building up, taking us towards that all-time high. Yeah, there is a chunk at 109 because that was the last peak there. So you can imagine a lot of people went short once it rolled over from that price. But other than that, it's pretty thin either side of it. I think we're just going to have to wait to see how that builds up. We could go into an order book and kind of see how the orders are stacking up, at least from a spot point of view. But I won't bore you with that right now. Big boy's still buying. So we know the canary's still breathing down there. So that's pretty good. I don't think there's anything more to say about this. I will obviously go into a bit of a chart action in a moment. Sorry, someone did post. Let me get a clean chart up. Let's just open anyway. Let's just get rid of that. So I can't remember who it was, forgive me. But someone in Discord posted about, I can't remember what they'd drawn. It was something like this. You have to excuse me. I can't remember exactly what it was. But it was something like this. I don't know what time frame it was on. I suppose it doesn't necessarily matter. And I was just about to comment. I don't know if I actually did send the post or if I said I'll talk about this later on tonight. And you know, I was just saying that what we really need to do now is we need to stick climbing above this level. So this, wherever they had drawn it, this sort of a sloping trend line here. And for obvious reasons, one, because we want to finally break through this. But two, really for me, we have to get above this 108, 109 level. And that's where I'm sort of looking at, because this is what I use for BitTensor all the way through December, January, February, sidestepping everything else. But the fact that we are just making these moves up, doesn't matter how strong the moves up, and we'll have a look at them with vector candles later. But let's just say this is the level we turn around at. No matter how strong that move up is, we still can't seem to make a higher high. And so all that momentum and all that excitement, all it's really doing is just, feeding people's greed for it to be reversed upon and back down. And that just feels like what it is. We need to start to clear these levels. So yeah, that is slope levels, fine. But I want to see us take out some of these other levels so we can actually say that we are starting to break the trend, and it is a downtrend. And we can start to try and build that up. Because right now, unfortunately, if we leave that too long, there's a good chance, I mean, I've not drawn it accurately, but you can get the picture. We're just going to, and worse than that, you could argue that this could be drawn way better. This could be something like this, connecting like that. And then suddenly, it doesn't even look that enticing, because you may end up getting something a bit more like that. And we are starting to get down those levels. So, we could well be seeing that. So this battleground rate at the moment, 106, absolutely we need to break it, 106.5. But for me, I want to see us above 109. I want to see us really challenging that all-time high as that next move. But until we break that level, and we'll have a look with vectors and fibs and EMAs later, but until we break this level with conviction, I'm not so sure right now. I'm thinking, oops, after such a strong move up, buyers might be pretty exhausted at the moment. And running into some sort of resistance, we might be seeing some selling, some profit taking, until we sort of, fill the boots back down here, buying in the lows again, and then we move through. And yeah, that's just where we need to go. But we'll probably cover that one a little bit later on. Okay, so a couple of the questions, I'll try and get through these, and then we'll go from there. First one is a subnet question. So Mike, welcome. He said he just joined. I'm not sure how soon you just joined, but I'm not doing the subnet alpha play. So I'm actually not really the best person to ask on this. I will give my views on your question, but yeah, I'm not there. What I would say is, just if you're going to do what I think you're going to do, get into that subnet thread on Discord. Find out the people that are really actively in there, what they're doing, what they're sort of how it's going for them, everything else, and you can gauge a picture of sort of where you're going to go. But to get to your actual question, you've put, you plan to invest quite aggressively in alpha following Simon's observations of the pattern formed by almost all new subnets. So I don't know what that pattern is, because I say I'm not into. I like subnets, but I'm not a big follower of the alpha token, if I'm perfectly honest. How many opportunities or new subnets are there likely to be between now and the end of the bull run? And what percentage of portfolio might one commit to each new subnet? 5%, 10%. I've run some of the numbers, and even if half the future opportunities new subnets go to zero, the ones that go up, plus the occasional one that goes to 50x plus, and their numbers get crazy. Also, just checking, we're buying alpha, not staking alpha, correct? Platform-wise, it's Talisman or Tau Stats with reserved Tau or Nova stake to root. FYI, you're building a spreadsheet of all subnets from Tau Stats to track the data, to track historic launches and future opportunities. Okay, so a lot of questions in there. I will try and break it down as best I can. Right, as I am understanding, when you're talking about the amount of new subnets that form, I believe there's anywhere from 2 to 4 subnets a week coming online. And we'll have a look at Tau Stats in a moment. But what's that mean between now and the end of the bull run? We don't know when the bull run's going to end, but let's just stick with a 4-year cycle mentality. Bitcoin's going to peak at the beginning of December. So it's likely that we're going to see altcoins peak towards the end of December. So we've got 6 months. Let's just make it really easy again and just say that there's 4 weeks every month. So we've got 24 weeks. We're getting 2 to 4 subnets a week. We're going to have anywhere from 50 to 100 new subnets, potentially by the end of 2025. So that's quite a lot. And of course, it may slow down, it may speed up, but I'm just going off what I've seen over the last few weeks in terms of subnets moving along and how many are forming on Tau Stats. And I've gone with that. So when you talk about, what percentage of portfolio might you commit to each new subnet? When you're saying 5 or 10%, I don't know, how much you're going to put of your actual overall portfolio into alpha tokens, but let's say it's even 100%. You're only going to get 10 or 20 new subnets if you choose 5 to 10%. So you've either got to narrow down the amount that are coming, and don't forget there's 123 already there at the moment that you might want to, dip your wick in. And so, as I understand it, you're probably looking more like 1%, maybe even less than 1% into some of these subnets. And you've also got to bear in mind, what strategy you're going to do. Are you buying and holding, you're selling, you're moving things around. But you're probably going to want something held in reserve, some BitTens held in reserve, Tau held in reserve. So if there is a new subnet, you can move into that. So those figures, as in percentage-wise, seem very high if your view is to get into quite a few new subnets. Now, this probably won't sit well, not just with you, but with other people, and I apologize for it, but my opinion is my opinion. You run the numbers, and even if half the future opportunities of new subnets go to zero, and the ones that go up, plus the occasional one goes to 50x, the numbers get crazy. What data are you basing that off? No offense, but it looks like you just kind of flipped the coin there and gone, well, half the opportunities shouldn't go to zero. Hey, they could all go to zero. And that's the risk appetite you've got to take. Now, for me, as I said, I like the idea of subnets. We're effectively building an ecosystem on the BitTensor network. And I think, a lot of the projects are great there. The alpha tokens, for me, these are, in my opinion, complete and utter gambles that haven't proven, and in my mind, haven't justified why they're needed. And I understand my understanding of BitTensor is going to be nowhere near, or subnet, the level that some of you people have. But I personally am just viewing a lot of these alpha tokens as memes. I'm not saying they're cash grabs. I'm not saying they are scammy or anything like that. But the life expectancy, shall we say, seems fairly low at the moment. We'll go into Tau Stats in a moment, as I said. And so the reality of you saying that, half may only go to zero. Okay, well, on to the other half, drop by 90%. You see what I'm saying? There's no empirical data, because it's relatively new, that even half are going to survive. Now, I'm sure not all of them will go to zero, but we can't just say that. And we can't be throwing out 50x's, just saying, one of them will get a 50x. Now, some have been doing very well recently, I will say that. But the other thing you've got to understand is that, as I understand it, the liquidity in a lot of these alpha tokens is incredibly low. So even if you on paper do 50x and you happen to put one Tau in and it's now worth 50 Tau, how can you extract that out? How easy is it to extract that out? And you may find that through slippage and everything else, it doesn't quite get there. So, I'm not sure how new you are to crypto. I'm not sure how new you are to trading. just be careful. That's all I'm saying. I appreciate there is a massive opportunity for success with alpha tokens. It's not something I'm personally dealing with, but yeah, just have a think. I do think your numbers 5 to 10 do seem quite high in terms of percentage, even if you're 100% in there. You're right in terms of platform with Tau Stats and Talisman, and yeah, you know, subnet 0. That's the way to do it. That's what I do. Just stake it en route. It's the best way for it. And we have a look. And I've got them all listed here. And as I say, you can scroll all the way down. And I know they're not active yet, but they've effectively been claimed. We're at 127. Pretty certain it was 123 earlier. But maybe I might be wrong. But yeah, but let's just have a look at Tau. That's how I would view it at the moment. And let's just have a look at price action on the monthly time frame. Okay. So I think a lot of people in Discord have probably been in subnets for over a month. And just have a look as I scroll down. And this is just to sort of prove a point of less speed and less haste. You know, just taking your time and easing yourself in may not be a problem. Because as we scroll down, you know, a lot of these alpha tones in the last 30 days are still double digits in the red. Some of them 30%. And there are a few greens, and I want to come back to some of these greens in a moment. But as we come down, just look at the amount of reds there are. And I think if you do speak to people in the subnet thread, most of them are probably actually still down. And that's just because they haven't really established themselves. I know, you know, the subnet themselves may be trying to get up and running and deliver something, but what are they actually delivering? How are they developing revenue, etc., like that? So you've got to kind of take all that into effect. But to me, right now, this is a sea of red. And remember, this is a sea of red versus Tau. And Tau's price has also been dropping as well. So it's like a double hit, in my opinion, of it sort of dropping down. Because, you know, Tau was 490 only a couple of weeks ago. We went down to 280 in a couple of days. So there's definitely something to have a look at there. Now, don't get me wrong. We've got 77. It's unknown. I don't know what it is. It's 130% up over the last 30 days, and it's 40% up in the last week. So we do have some successes, even at 50%, 60% up in a month. I'd take that. 23 is, I suppose, good too. I mean, all of them are. Merit 73, 238, 56% up in the last week. So a very good one there. There's one that's even wilder. Yeah, this one here, Quantum. Is nearly 600% up, and in the last week it actually is 652% up, which actually just goes to show you that prior to this week's massive movement on it, it was deeply in the red over the last 30 days. Is there any more that no, that's it. So there are some good ones here that are doing well at the moment, but I just sentiment at the moment is 100% extreme greed. I mean, if that's not a sell signal, I'm not necessarily sure what is. I don't know if anyone is in this and if they have taken any profits or what they're doing with it. But, you know, you go back to this time last week and you would have 9x'd your position from here, assuming you can extract it out. And I don't know this project, don't know the liquidity or anything like that. But, you know, the fact that it says Quantum is on BitTensor launching soon. I mean, so again, not knowing anything about this particular subnet and its alpha, you know, what's actually going on here, what's driving that price up, and just bear all that in mind. That's all I'm going to say. I know I spent a lot of time talking about it, but I have my reservations, and I am just more than happy being the boring guy that'll just sit there and get my 14% in root or whatever it is. And when you guys all make it, then please invite me to your island. I got this out because this me being facetious whilst I was talking about it. But when I was talking about you sort of saying, you know, 50 going to 0, it's a coin flip. For me, it kind of feels like you're rolling 100-sided dice. And I never really played Warhammer 40,000 or whatever. But I remember my brother was into it and he used to have 100-sided dice. And yeah, in my opinion, that's like what the odds are at the moment, is rolling one of those. So anyway, sorry, Mike. I hope that didn't put you off too much. But Pete's then gone to say, what are your views on the rollout of CBDCs and their implications? CBDCs. So a central bank digital currency. Now, I don't even think that there's a tinfoiled hat needed to be worn here. But for me, CBDCs are anti what crypto is. Okay, and they aren't cryptocurrencies. I mean, they're a digital currency provided by a centralized bank that is backed by that bank's money or fiat currency, which sounds great to the layman, but as we know, that money itself isn't backed by anything. So it's not exactly starting off on the best footing. But then we have this sort of driving us forward to effectively a cashless society. And don't get it twisted, don't get it wrong. CBDCs don't fully work unless we are fully cashless, because what they're trying to control and understand is sort of where the money is, and they can talk about sort of making sure they're protecting you as a consumer so that they can track any fraudulent activity, and they can spin it all the ways they want. But what doesn't work with CBDCs is, in my opinion, if 95% is on CBDCs, but you're running around with a scaffolder in a building and they're just still doing cash in hand, it kind of breaks the system a little bit, because there's always that little bit that you aren't sure what's going on. So we've seen since COVID that launch towards a much more cashless system. I go to places all over the place, and in New Yorkshire Dales with absolutely zero signal, and you go there and it's like, no, we don't accept cash. And they've just made it so convenient now with your mobile phone apps or your contactless cards or whatever, that actually I don't really carry that much cash. But I do find it annoying when you just go somewhere and they're like, no, we won't accept cash no matter what. I almost feel like I want to just say, well, sorry, I didn't bring a card, I've only got cash with me. Anyway, so this is interesting because this is MasterCard giving us a guide to what CBDCs are. Where does it go here? Yeah, so what are CBDCs? So they put here, but CBDCs, digital currencies issued by a bank with the same guarantees that back a nation's paper currency. And we know that there is nothing that backs those. Equivalent to cash and designed for everyday transactions. Sounds great, doesn't it? How quickly will they take off? Well, about 94% of central banks are engaged in some form with CBDCs. Amazingly, Donald Trump has banned them. So he, within a few days of being in the office, actually, I don't know what they call it over there, but where can I find it? He, a revocation of an executive orders, that's what they call it, executive orders. So this is it. The order that came out in July 7th, 2022, which was to, look at digital assets, of which one of them was the United States exploring CBDCs. And they go in here, there's actually words it somewhere where it bans the CBDCs. I'm just trying to find the words here. I should have highlighted it earlier. Prohibition of central bank digital currencies. Except to the extent required by laws, agencies are hereby prohibited from undertaking any action to establish, issue, or promote CBDCs within the jurisdiction of the United States. Very bold statement there. Whether or not that will just get turned around when Trump leaves office and the Democrats come back in, we'll leave that for another time. And actually, this has sort of really pushed forward stablecoin legitimacy in the United States at the moment. As I mentioned earlier on, with the Genius Act being approved by the Senate, we've seen Circle getting its IPO and absolutely flying at the moment on that one. But yeah, the White House have gone, no, we're not doing it. However, the European Central Bank have gone the exact opposite way. So beginning of the month, they sort of released this paper. We didn't really talk about it, but effectively they're doing a 12-month pilot scheme, soft launch of their CBDCs. So going down to this bit down the bottom. So phase one, the infrastructure deployment and security validation, that's sort of started now. So that's what started this month, going over the summer. And then phase two, we're going to do some controlled institutional testing and integration, September to November, and then a full-scale pilot for sort of 6-7 months will then roll out at the back end of this year. So they are moving ahead with their CBDCs. Well, nobody's friend, Christine Lagarde, she sort of went on to talk about it, and she was, trying to spin it by saying, look, no one's really done a large-scale pilot like this, with the exception of China. And she was really sort of singing the praises of China, bringing out their CBDCs, and we'll talk about that in a second. She's trying to spin and say, look, this isn't going to just help the wealthy. It's not just for the young. It's going to absolutely help everybody. But the point here is that actually, as I understand it, I'm not Chinese. I visited China for 3 weeks, so I maybe not be the best person to speak about this. But from what I understand, the I can't remember what the group is now. It's not like WeChat or whatever it is. Their CBDCs have in place all of the concerns that we have with our tinfoil hat on, in terms of, because they are dictating via their central bank digital currency who gets paid what. They get to dictate why you get paid or why you get penalized. Travel too far, not get as much. Don't eat, don't eat enough vegetables or eat too much meat, we're going to knock 20% off. Want to book 2 holidays, whatever. And so that's the real concern, in my opinion. It's a concern most people, is that actually it's going to take a very strong control, because the government can suddenly restrict how you get paid. They can put restrictions on it. They don't talk about that, obviously, but it's just a line of code. So what's the reason to ultimately stop it? And so that's my big concern for them. I'm not actually sure where the United Kingdom stands at the moment. I'll have a look at that afterwards. But yeah, the European Central Bank moving that way. So again, people who are anti-Brexit or what have you, if you don't like CBDCs, then as much as you hate what Brexit stood for, that may have at least bought us a little bit of time. Don't think it's going to kill it for us. But anyway, that's where we are with that one. Right, there's one last question here, or comment. Don't need to put your name in. I've read this comment. Look, I appreciate, given what you've written, you might not want to put your name for. Can I just say that, safe space here. You can come on here. Anyone come on here, leave a question, you'll leave a comment, just say, Harry, I hate the news. It's crap. It's boring. It wastes too much time. Whatever. Don't feel you have to hide your name. We're not going to search you out, or you just forgot to put it in. Doesn't really matter. But you put, can you do more charting on other tokens? Love what we get on a Tuesday and when we get it on Thursday. But now the trading pubs are very subnet heavy, and so the charting takes a back seat. Very brief snapshots on daily with few setups and ranges. Would love to see more setups and scenarios across the week. The honest answer for me is that Bitcoin kind of, in my opinion, gives you an overall direction of where the market's going, and the vast majority of people are so BitTensor heavy. I've just focused on that, but I'd be more than happy to do some more charting. What I would suggest, and maybe that should have been the poll instead of the one that I've got here, but I'll do a little poll in Discord, is I'll speak to Lewis, I'll speak to Simon and see if they're okay with it. But I do know what you mean with Thursdays, and rightly so, there's a lot to digest with Alpha, with subnets, and given people's involvement in subnets, it's only right that quite a bit of time is put into that. But maybe I could do another day a week where I just go live and I just go through some charts, just solely charting. I'll probably do it in an afternoon and then just post the link and just feel like you can just go and have a look at the link. So you don't have to be live for it. I'll just do 15-20 minutes, none of this guff of thumbnails or anything like that, and just have a look, and we can kind of follow on from what we did on a Tuesday, maybe cover what's on a Friday prior to the weekend, or maybe doing it on a Monday and then a Tuesday didn't really work. I think Friday's probably the better day. Let me speak to Lewis about that. And then I was kind of thinking, well, if that's what we'll do, I've started to kind of build something on the right hand side here with potentially some crypto. So whoever it was, or if anyone's got any other ideas of maybe some other cryptocurrency projects you want me to talk about, drop it in the Avenger chat and I can add it here. But obviously we'll talk Bitcoin. I think we'd have to talk Ethereum. Link and Near, well, Link obviously is quite a big player. Same with Solana. Near I have, so yeah, we could do that. SPX, meme coin, I'm loving that at the moment. BitTensor we could do. We can have a look at some sort of how the movement of the traditional markets are going, and I've kind of just picked the FANG TM stocks there really, but we can have a look at that and maybe have a look at some other sort of metrics, whether it be dominance or something like that. So just kind of run through whether it be we'll do high level and low level following on from that, just trying to give people a bit of a flavor of where that is, and I just use all of the same ones that I use. I started building this and I forgot just how wild some of these are. Like, you turn them on, market sessions, this is just to find out which markets are open, but it's got all the moon cycles on, which then you put on Trades Reality, and it's just like I condense a lot of it down because it's too much information, to be perfectly honest. And then when you throw in all this as well, so I'll tidy all that up. I'll speak with Simon Lewis, and like I say, I'm more than happy to run it. You know, it won't be a set time. It'll just be a see. It's already come from it. Sui and Kaz. Let me just add those to the list now, so don't forget. It'll just be a right. I've got 20 minutes spare. I'll do it now, and then if someone happens to see that it's gone live, fine. But otherwise, you'll just get a link posted in chat. But I think Sui definitely. Kaz, I know a lot of us have been in that, and probably some of us still have some residual elements within there. So definitely add those two for now. But yeah, that was just my thought. Try and help with that one, and yeah, go from there. In terms of actual trades and setups, I'll have a consideration on that because I'm not really doing any trading myself. I started and then I stopped, and yeah, but I can certainly just kind of run through what I'm seeing, not just on the daily, but get into. I like to look at sort of 15 and 1 hour time frames when I'm actually just staring at the charts. Anyway, Erjan's put, the interesting scenario I find myself in was I was perfectly happy with sitting in route, but as the yield is dropping so sharply and will eventually get closer, I find myself forced to go into subnets. If the yield stayed reasonable for long term, around above 5%, I'd be tempted to stay in route. I mean, that is true, and I accept that, but I suppose, find that the risk is still there, that it doesn't materialize into anything. And I get, I get getting carried away. I've been in RT now since 2017. I was there for the ICO boom. I was there for the rebasing DAO boom. And for those of you that were around in 2021, 2022, I was in 2 rebasing DAOs and that was it. RT was in across 30. And I, with as much love as I can give, we didn't do well in them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that subnets aren't going to do well. But what I just mean is, don't feel you have to get carried away in something because that's what everyone else is doing. And yeah, I get your argument there that, I'm not getting any staking rewards, so I might as well take an extra risk to try and get it. Well, I don't get any staking rewards with Bitcoin, but I'm happy to still have it and hold it. That's just me, and I accept that I am just battle weary now after 3rd cycle. And I started off the beginning of this cycle a very big optimist with altcoins. But you'll know over the last 12, probably longer months, that's changed. And I just don't see altcoins doing as well. That's a talk for another time, perhaps. And as such, I don't really see alpha tokens doing that well. Maybe they do well next cycle. Anyway, Bobby, I've added those ones. And then Erjan's input. I've written off the subnet portion of my tau pot. If it goes to 0, you're okay with that? Well, that's great. I know there's some people that are 50% plus, and they may not have that mental fortitude that you do, but it's you doing you. And I having spoken with you a number of times, I know you're confident enough to do that. So, good luck to you for it. And as I say, I genuinely wish you all the success in the world, because I cannot wait to be invited to your island and go and jet skiing or what have you. Okay, it's getting pretty late and we haven't done any actual proper charting. So let's get in. Not that one. Bitcoin. So now we've got the vectors and everything else that's on here. And we can kind of just see, have you ever used, I've never done a BTC backed loan, to be honest. And sorry, just to digress back to this, I've not massively looked into it. So maybe I'm sort of, giving it some bad credit here. But again, back in 2022, when everyone was using Aave and the likes, the amount of people that I had to help out in the community who had got themselves tied in knots, especially with game theory of Wonderland and Abracadabra and all of this, it just really put me off because people were just so raveled up in it. They couldn't get out quickly when things went to shit. And I just haven't looked back at it. I got to the point now where I'm worried I won't ever sell my Bitcoin. I just see it as too valuable. So yeah, maybe we'll see if the risk is right. But anyway, I'm gonna look at this one. I'm not sure what those dotted lines were drawn on, but they were there from last week. But let's just get rid of them for now. But what we can see here, so this, since the end of May, so the last month or so, as I mentioned earlier, Bitcoin's just been in a bit of a downtrend. And I mentioned this last week, there could be some better drawn, I accept. Sort of bull flag mentality within this level. I absolutely accept that. We don't know when that bull flag is going to come up, but for me, when it does, may well indicate that final leg up to wherever it ends up going, 140,000 or whatever. So yeah, okay, I get that. But now we have a look at, and this isn't, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but now we have a look at, what we've seen over the last month. Not many vector candles on the daily time frame. We had 2 red candles. One was 2 days ago. We've had the stonking green one. But that to me is the point, is that on the daily, it's very hard to form a vector candle. Something very extreme has to happen. And daily candles can get left behind. Absolutely. We see some levels down in the low 90s, which I've signaled as maybe areas that we'll end up reattacking later on. But now that, we've got this vector candle here, it's formed. It does call into question sort of, is it at some stage, and maybe not immediately, going to be reattacked? Maybe it's because it's off that bounce there. Whereas, even on these weeks where we've had steady normal growth, we've still found ourselves sort of coming a cropper at that level I'd previously drawn and got rid of. We're not far away from that. Sort of, as I said, 107 levels, kind of where that peak is. Now, what I do like about this is we came down, we effectively retested the 50 EMA. And what do we have? We have the 50 EMA cloud just to give us that. And we found the bottom of the 50 EMA cloud. And then the very next day we shot through and we broke through the 50, the 20 and the 10. And we're currently forming above it. And I like that. That is positive to see. And so that's why I stand by the fact of we need to clear that 106.9, 107 level. So we can start to actually form this first higher high, reversing the trend, build back off this, maybe retaking some of it back down at 103 before sort of building back up. But it is nice to see even on the daily time frame that we have actually managed to bust through those. Now, if we break it down onto the 4-hour time frame, we are starting to see more vectors. And again, I've talked about this on Bitcoin and on BitTensor in the past, that as we get on lower time frames, these vector candles do get reattacked in ranging periods a lot. And so what we're seeing now on the 4-hour time frame, again, move down pretty much to the 800 EMA on the 4-hour. Perfect. Okay, great level to come back down to. This was a strong red vector candle. What happened? Immediately recovered. And then on the way up, it actually formed 2 more vector candles. Green, very strong volume. Blue, the volume is still strong, but it's dying down. And then what we're in was stagnated. Now we did, again, as I say, reattack, taking the 20, the 50, the 10, and then this occasion, the 200 EMA. And actually, I mean, the 4 of those are pretty much on top of each other at around about 104 in this blue vector. And we are building quite nicely off this at the moment. But we need that next leg up. We haven't really retested the 50, although you could argue the 200 is probably a little bit stronger. But yeah, my targets would have to be, sort of this here and this here, obviously, and this one and this one. And I don't know when, in which order they're going to come. Well, that's no one knows that really. So we just got to be mindful and watch. And for me, this blue one can be taken out tonight without any concern whatsoever, because it could come all the way back down, take it out, and then move back up. Would say bullish perfectly. We start to lose this and build below as we take this one out, then yeah, okay, we've taken it out. And look, I'll go back to, let me get rid of all these. Just look at how many vector candles there have been, since the beginning of May. And except for, okay, in the last week and a half, we've had this one up here. But generally, it's been the last week. We've got one form. All these other ones have been cleared out. So I stand by that in this range. If we stay within, this range here and here, however that forms, we'll take out all 4 of these at some stage. And maybe the momentum is still to the upside at the moment. Maybe we find some more momentum to do that. But I'm sure as hell believe we'll also take these ones down here. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We need, that strong move. I want to see some consolidation. I'd want this green one to be taken out by a wick and a wick only, and then building back up within the blue. But that's kind of where I see that. I think the hourly is kind of a similar picture. I mean, potential sort of W formation here at the bottom. strong move up. We're just in the consolidation period. So actually, maybe we do have legs to go up as we just continue through. And yeah, we're just stalling here. News driven though. I think, we get Trump to get back on the table with Iran and everyone else, and maybe we start to look to tidy that up. But I do think that Bitcoin is a bit of an outlier and stands out a little bit better than some of the other altcoins. We look at BitTensor. So BitTensor's had that move down. So what happened for me, because as most of you know, I was out of the market from 390, wherever that is, here-ish. We're down here, and I didn't buy in there, and I wasn't really too fussed about it. We got back up to 320, and again, I was hesitant. I hadn't done anything with it, and we came crashing back down to 300. I thought, right, well, here we go. But unfortunately, we got back up this green candle here, and I was effectively forced into action. And so I bought back in at 320. I don't know what time it was, just before I took my daughter to netball. So must have been around about 5 o'clock. But I didn't like it. I didn't want to buy in because, much like I saw with Bitcoin, what I'm seeing here is I feel like that is going to get recovered. Okay. I've jumped onto the 4 hour straight away with BitTensor here, but that is going to get recovered. So I've actually already sold it, and the taxman be damned. And I sold it, I don't know, 2 o'clock this afternoon or whatever it was, because I just didn't like the position it was in. I just felt uncomfortable being there. I made a $40 move on that one there, and I'll be damned. Maybe it rallies up from that one, but I kind of given myself that extra cushion that, I'd have to get past 400, probably even more now before I was in a net loss from that there. But it just felt that was the right thing. And we've started to see it roll over, but doesn't mean we're doomed yet, because what's actually happened? These 2 green vector candles have formed. Now we've started to just eat back into this one. And all we're doing at the moment is just back to the 50 EMA. Happy days with that move. Let's throw a fib on at the 4 hour. Now we're here. See what we get. Come on. It hits the 0.5 perfectly, and it turns back round, and we're having that little battleground with the 386. We lose that one. Well, look what it's going to take us down to 283, 320 again. And we'll clear that vector candle and the vast majority of this one too. And happy days, I'm back where I rebought. So yeah, I think that's it. In terms of, the work that BitTensor's got to do, and I've just gone and deleted an indicator, I don't know how. Let's just say we do bounce from this level and we continue back up. Obviously, that's a level to look at. Okay, and that's pretty much my absolute, I have to bail back out and have to get back in. Because it's at 390 where I got out. I still have a little bit of an uplift from that first move. But between there, we've got this. We've got the 200 and the 800 EMA on the 4 hour. I got rid of the fib level, but there's the 618 between there as well. At 375. Matter of fact, the 618 and those, and you could argue, given how powerful the 618 is, that actually this move up, bounce back down, move to here. That could easily be the case. But even if it was, and I'll try and let's just get rid of that and that and go to the daily. It doesn't show up so well now. But even if that was the case, so that was a circle that I tried to draw, not so well. But it's kind of just getting up to that upper level, still in that downtrend that we saw with BitTensor, with Bitcoin. I don't know where that line is best drawn. You kind of you could see we're in some sort of channel there. But yeah, it's kind of getting close to where that level is. So I've got a few strings in my bow, so a few little levels that, if it goes up, but I'm happy to take that risk at the moment. That's what sidestepping suddenly is all about. And it's about being patient. You can't just knee jerk back into things. Do I wish I knee jerked back in at 288? Of course I did. I was watching it when it was down there. But, we didn't know where we were. And at the actual time, so just note, remember, this is the 800 EMA. Once I get this line down here, 800 EMA. Look at it. It's lost the 50, lost the 200, lost everything. Look, high test into it, fallen back down. What did it get caught on? The 800 EMA. And it bounced on. But we had actually gone through it. When you're looking on the 5-minute chart, you're thinking, well, where is the end at the moment? Maybe we do get down here. It's only when the daily closes, and then Monday just happened. And, I wasn't really up at the early hours when Asia was there, and I was just waiting to see what it was. But it happened what it happened. And the only concern I have at the moment is one, that candle's bounced off at the moment on the daily, high tested into the 20 EMA. I mean, such an extended move back down. Would expect a retest of the 10, which it did yesterday, retest of the 20, which it's doing right now, and high testing off that one. And you have a look at sort of similar times. You know, the 800 didn't exist, but you know, this is we've seen this before. Strong moves up, followed by just falls back down, creating lower highs, and always strong moves up. And so yeah, naturally we might see that strong move again. I need to see this break 420, 425, 430. I need it to get up here, but it just isn't showing that strength. Yesterday was a strong day. 15% increase on the day. One of the better performers of altcoins out there. Absolutely. But I need to see the strength continue through, and I don't mind if it stalls whilst it does it, builds up some momentum. But we can't really get happy until we get above that level there. And to be honest with you, until we start building on that 50 EMA to the plus side, and up we go. Okay. Don't there's anything on the 1 hour. Let me have a look at Ethereum. So go on to the daily. So Ethereum kind of just did the dirty on us. I mean, it didn't quite do a Bart Simpson, but when we met last week, I was talking about whether it's a bullish rectangle or a Bart Simpson. But look again, this is the fib level. I don't know where I've drawn it from. It was on there from last week. But 618, rejected from it, comes all the way down to the 382. We're battling the 0.5 at the moment. The 0.5, the 50 EMA, the 20 EMA, the 10 EMA, the 200 EMA, and the 800 EMA are all within $100. Actually, not even $100. Are all within $90 of each other. We talk about tough levels. That's a tough level there. And now I worry that this might end up being a Bart Simpson, because I've got that lovely vector zone down there to take. So this got a lot of work to do. We've got to get above 2730, obviously, and then we can start talking about 3000 and beyond there. But yeah, some of the more better looking charts with, you know, some of the memes, Fartcoin and SPX. Well, Fartcoin maybe not, but certainly SPX. You know, really bouncing from that dip down to 892, and then, you know, one stage here, you know, it almost doubled in its price. Maybe not quite doubled, but certainly got in there. But again, actually, now we look at it, very decent. No, that's not decent. A decent level there of some sort. It's running into blue vector candle, maybe back down to 106. And my thought process now is: do I sell the like of Near and Ondo, which make occasionally good gains, but you know, SPX can rally hard and try and ride that. And I think that's something I need to consider, if I'm perfectly honest. Bitcoin dominance. So we get it on the weekly because it's just going to be easier to see. But it's that 71 level in and around here, which kind of previous waterfall moments in 2017, 2020, and 2021. And I feel like we're just working our way back up to that one. Now, doesn't really have, you know, this is a steady climb. It's like taking the stairs. This normally is elevator up and elevator down. But yeah, so, you know, when we get here, I'm not sure what we really get from here. Do not think we really fall down to 40%. I spent a whole time talking about last week about institutions and why. But, you know, I do see this just climbing back through. We've taken out that wick, so we can get rid of that one. And maybe we just, you know, our only sort of hope at the moment is just retests every so often back to the 50 EMA comes through, just retesting it through and getting some decent uplifts from BitTensor, etc. as and other altcoins that you may be in, going that way. Circle's having a bit of a pullback. It's at 300 on Friday. Oh, yesterday, sorry. Which is just wild, but finally having some sort of pullback there. It's just not enough information. I'm not in it yet. It's definitely something I'm interested in. But look at all these gaps. You can't tell me that there's not going to be some decent selling there. I'm just going to wait. IPOs love to run. Might be running a little bit longer than I want it to. But yeah. Anything else really that I want to look at, given it's 9:15? Did NASDAQ take it? No, it hasn't taken its all-time high yet. Okay. I think we're probably there. One thing I do want to comment before I go is fear is the time to buy. And so I set myself a few buy orders just prior to the weekend, and you know, I had to work it in because I do it on CoinPass or whatever CoinPass has become now. So it's in pounds. It's really hard to work out where to get it. But you know, they hit and then they've moved up and they're in profit. But you know, a lot of people don't like buying on red candles, and I don't sometimes with altcoins because I don't see the strength versus Bitcoin. So I do feel like I'm really trying to buy the best spots. But with Bitcoin, I just have that mentality. I'm just buy and forget, and it works so well for me over the last sort of 4 years. And so, you know, I encourage you to just have a think about whether or not that is something that you might want to consider from a longer term point of view. And you know, be bloody £100 a month or whatever it is that you want it to be, feel comfortable with, but just having some exposure. I mean, you know, I've been in Bitcoin crypto, for 8 years or so, and you know, I should have so much more Bitcoin than I do. Because I feel like I mess around with altcoins and I do see some benefit from that. But at the same time, I don't have any emotional attachment to altcoins, where I always seem to have some sort of emotional attachment to Bitcoin. So anyway, we'll leave that one as it stands. Bobby's put, I think if you're in subnets, it's really hard to sidestep tout. I'm sure it probably is because of the liquidity there. Urjan's put, I don't think APY is going to bail us out. You would have to be in it for years for that to play out, even then, I doubt APY is going to help, as it will come down to differently as subnets mature. Yeah, I get that. I'm a bit behind on the live, but why is a rate cut good for BTC and crypto? So you're going to catch up with this quite late on if you're a bit behind. But essentially, you've got to understand that to borrow money, you have to pay interest on that, and the more interest. The higher the interest rate, the more interest you're going to pay. So a lower interest rate means that people like to borrow money. And what do they do when they borrow money? They do it on risk on assets, like the stock markets, like crypto. And you know what? The government feels great because when it has to refinance its debt, it doesn't have to pay as much because the interest rate isn't as high. So interest rates are great for curbing inflation because people suddenly go into saving. They're not spending as much. It brings it down. So there is a yin and a yang to interest rates and inflation. But inflation is getting under control. I'm not saying it's under control, but you know, we're in the 2% for the United States, and we're moving down. It's just sticky. It's hard to get to that 2% mandate when you get towards the bottom. And so keeping the interest rates where they are is just trying to help unstickify inflation and really get that stubborn side to push back down. Once it does, we can then start to turn off the interest rates. And with that, once we get the interest rates down to a suitable level, I mean, ideally zero, but wherever we've decided that that's enough, we can then turn the money printer on. And then with the money printer on and interest rates low, people just go nuts effectively. And you can have a look at charts of like interest rates and M2 and all that kind of stuff and overlay the stock markets. And you can see pretty much 9 out of every 10 times that's happened, we've seen new all-time highs in the stock markets. Now, we are still seeing new all-time highs in the stock markets, which is kind of strange, but people are hoping that we will really inject and super inject that even higher when we get the interest rates down. Now, I'm not going to talk about it for long, but one thing that I have in the back of my mind, I'm reading a book on the Great Depression at the moment, and there's a lot of similarities, shall we say, in terms of just, you know, every man and his dog thinking they can just make money at the stock market at the moment. It's up only kind of mentality, and the stock market is defying previous known logic about it. So that sort of sits in the back of my head. If I'm reading what happened 100 years ago, I'm living it at the moment, yet I'm not seeming to heed those advices that have gone in the past, because I think this time it's different. But, you know, if we can get those interest rates down, we turn the money printer on. Previous history has suggested that will lead to further increases until the whole system collapses. And we get another Great Depression like we had in the end of the 20s and 30s last century, I suppose. Right, I'll leave that as it is. Much too much of a rant for me there. Thursday Trading Club, I will confirm by tomorrow about what's happening with Friday. I'm up for it, so hopefully Lewis and Simon are up for it too, and you can just give you a bit more charting. I'll populate that with more, but please just drop any ones you want in there. If it suddenly gets to the list of 50, I might not be able to do them all, but I'll try and just bring a bit more variety for winning that. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Just be careful out there. You know, I'm not completely optimistic at the moment, but we are where we are with that. Speak to you all soon. Cheers now.